Happy Sunday, guys. I have been wanting to do this video for a long time. It's going to be a hard and challenging video to do for a number of reasons, one of which being I'm really tired today. But I think we're just going to dive into the text and see where it takes us. And the question we're looking to answer is, what nation is Mystery Babylon? And there are numerous passages in the scriptures that deal with Mystery Babylon. But Revelation is the only book of the Bible that actually calls her Mystery Babylon. And my argument is this. John the Revelator called her Mystery because he didn't know what exactly she was, and he called her Babylon because it was a future end times entity that resembled ancient Babylon in glory and power and spiritual characteristics, but it wasn't ancient Babylon. Mystery Babylon and ancient Babylon, they're not the same. And we know how ancient Babylon fell, so when we see passages in the Old Testament that are talking about things that are going to happen in the end times, and we have an entity that it's calling Babylon that is falling, but it's falling differently than the way ancient Babylon actually fell, then that leads us to ask that question, well, what Babylon are we looking at in Jeremiah 50 and Jeremiah 51 and some of these chapters in Isaiah and so forth? Well, it's Mystery Babylon. These chapters in the Old Testament give more clarity to what Mystery Babylon in Revelation is, and Mystery Babylon in Revelation unlocks these portions of the Old Testament where, for a long time before the New Testament came, saints and prophets had to wonder, well, what's this Babylon entity that's being talked about? It's clearly not ancient Babylon. So, really, the most descriptive passage in the Bible concerning the destruction of Mystery Babylon is Jeremiah 50 and 51. And so we're just going to go through these and lay out some of the characteristics of Mystery Babylon and her destruction, and then we'll see where we end up. And I'll probably pull in some other passages as we go, maybe a little bit of Daniel 2, Daniel 7, and depending on how awake I am by the end of Jeremiah, we'll maybe dive back into the actual Mystery Babylon text from Revelation. But what was Babylon? Well, it was an ancient city, and it was an ancient empire that dominated the civilized world. So it makes sense that Mystery Babylon of the end times would also be a signature city that represents an end times superpower level nation that dominates the civilized world. And I think you will very rapidly, if you're honest with yourself, make the same connections that I did when I studied this stuff back in 2019. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. So this is Jeremiah chapter 50. And as we go, I'm just going to do up this little list here. And, alright, well, here we go. The word that the Lord spake against Babylon and against the land of the Chaldeans by Jeremiah the prophet. Declare ye among the nations, and publish, and set up a standard, publish, and conceal not. Say, Babylon is taken, Bel is confounded, Merodach is broken in pieces. Her idols are confounded, her images are broken in pieces. So, idols and images. For out of the north there cometh up a nation against her, which shall make her land desolate, and none shall dwell therein. They shall remove, they shall depart, both man and beast. Okay, there's an enemy to the north. In those days and in that time, saith the Lord, the children of Israel shall come, they and the children of Judah together, going and weeping. They shall go and seek the Lord their God. They shall ask the way to Zion with their faces thitherward, saying, Come and let us join ourselves to the Lord in a perpetual covenant that shall not be forgotten. Now this is really interesting. My people hath been lost sheep, their shepherds have caused them to go astray. They have turned them away on the mountains, they have gone from mountain to hill, they have forgotten their resting place. This is really fascinating. Look at these three verses, Jeremiah 54 through 6, and actually further even. Um, all that have found them, understand this is speaking of the Jewish people, right? All that have found them have devoured them, and their adversaries said, We offend not, because they have sinned against the Lord, the habitation of justice, even the Lord, the hope of their fathers. Remove out of the midst of Babylon, and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans, and be as the he-goats before the flock. So there's a large Jewish population in Mystery Babylon, but they're not slaves in this Babylon. How do we know that? Because God tells them, remove out of the midst of Babylon and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans and be as the he-goats before the flocks. The Jews who are captive in Babylon, ancient Babylon, they were slaves. They didn't have they couldn't just up and leave whenever they wanted to. They didn't have that self-determination. This is clearly something else. So whatever this entity is, Mystery Babylon of the end times, she has a large Jewish population living within her. Alright, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, and they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken, their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man, none shall return in vain. You're going to see references to arrows and fire as we continue on. Destroyed by arrows. Enemy coalition in the north. Okay. And Chaldea shall be a spoil. All that spoiled her shall be satisfied, saith the Lord. So, if all that spoiled her shall be satisfied, she must be very wealthy. Whether we're talking resources, whether we're talking territories, whatever it is that they're spoiling, these nations that come against her and ultimately destroy her, they're satisfied. They get plenty out of it. And they are great nations from the north country. So you're already starting to see that Mystery Babylon is probably not just a single city, right? How is a single city, the spoil of that, going to satisfy an assembly of great nations? Very unlikely. Spoils satisfy great nations. Alright, let's continue. Because ye were glad, because ye rejoiced, O ye destroyers of mine heritage, because ye are grown fat as the heifer at grass and yellow as bulls. Your mother shall be, alright, destroyer of mine heritage. There could be a couple different understandings of this. Are we talking the Jewish people? Now, here's where things get a little confusing, right? Because we're kind of in the midst of this debate right now. Who are the Jewish people, the real descendants of Abraham? Well, I don't have a clear answer for you. There are definitely different groups of ethnic Jews, and currently the ones that are on top of the hierarchy in the state of Israel are the white Eastern European Ashkenazi Jews. But there are, there's other ethnic groups of Jews as well. And the reason for this is the Jews did a really bad job of obeying the commandment when God told them don't mingle with other people. And so there's a lot of confusion there. And then there are spiritual Jews. That would be us Christians. Those who are truly Abraham's descendants in spirit, because we follow the promised Messiah of God, who is the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So, destroyers of mine heritage, what does this mean? Is this someone who's offended against Israel, for example, like during COVID, where somehow Israel ended up with the vaccine before anyone else and a very large percentage of Israelis got vaccinated? Or is this destroyers of mine heritage as in Christians? We're funneling money to Ukraine, Ukraine's funneling money to Syria, and the regime in Syria are terrorists and they're massacring Christians. you know, either way, America has the blood of believers and saints on their hands. Jeremiah 50:12, your mother shall be sore confounded, she that bare you shall be ashamed. Behold, the hindermost of nations shall be a wilderness, a dry land and a desert. So, Mystery Babylon has a mother country, a nation that from which she sprang forth. That's interesting. Okay. And the hindermost of nations. Okay, that's interesting. That's interesting. Because of the wrath of the Lord it shall not be inhabited, it shall be wholly desolate. Every one that goeth by Babylon shall be astonished, and hiss at her plagues. Put yourselves in array against Babylon round about, all ye that bend the bow, shoot at her, spare no arrows, for she hath sinned against the Lord. So destroyed by arrows. Destroyed, we'll say attacked by. This is not what happened to ancient Babylon. We're not talking about ancient Babylon here, folks. This entity in Jeremiah 50 and 51 is a mystery. It's called Babylon, but it's a mystery of what it was. It's Mystery Babylon. And specifically an attack by missile weapons. Shoot against her round about, she hath given her hand, her foundations are fallen, her walls are thrown down. Has walls / a wall. We'll see this language again. For it is the vengeance of the Lord, take vengeance upon her, as she hath done, do unto her. Okay, so understand she's being recompensed and destroyed because she has destroyed other nations. Interesting. Alright, let's carry on. Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest. So itinerant, seasonal, we'll just say seasonal migrant workers. Let me read this again. Cut off the sower from Babylon, and him that handleth the sickle in the time of harvest. For fear of the oppressing sword, they shall turn every one to his people, and they shall flee every one to his own land. In other words, there are foreigners in the country working as seasonal agricultural workers. We have entire industries here in the U.S. that are based on that. That's really interesting. And when Babylon's finally destroyed, they're going to return to their own people. They're going to flee to their own land. Israel is a scattered sheep, the lions have driven him away. First, the king of Assyria hath devoured him, and last, this Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. So Babylon has a king. This is where things get really interesting. And actually, I'd meant to look into this in a little more detail. So in the Bible, you know, we have the biblical character, the greatest king of ancient Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? And Nebuchadnezzar, he was very arrogant. He got it into his head that he was a god. And then the God of heaven had to humble him, drive him to madness for years, where he became like a wild beast and was just running around naked out in the wilderness. And then finally, after a number of years, sanity returned to him and he was given the throne again. And at that point he acknowledged the Creator, the God of the Bible, as being the one true God. That's what happened to Nebuchadnezzar. But there's this interesting misspelling of the name, Nebuchadrezzar, in the scriptures. And actually, let's just look it up real quick and see what verses it shows up in. Nebuchadrezzar. So, instead of Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadrezzar. Now, this is fascinating because well, I don't know 100% on this, so I'm not going to say anything conclusive, but I'm wondering a little bit if the Rezar version of this name has some kind of indicator, pointer, or connotation for the end times. And there's a couple reasons I think I think this may be the case. But maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe these are just forms of the name that are interchangeable. I'll have to dig into that in a little more detail later. Anyway, let's continue on. There is a king over this mystery Babylon. And specifically this verse, Jeremiah 50, says that there's some betrayal of Israel that this king pulls off. Israel's a scattered sheep, the lions have driven him away. First the king of Assyria hath devoured him, and last this Nebuchadrezzar, king of Babylon, hath broken his bones. There may be more to this that I haven't, I have notes on the subject, but let's just keep going. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on this. I want to get the rough points down, and then we'll revisit the highlights here. Anyway, therefore thus saith the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel, behold, I will punish the king of Babylon and his land, as I have punished the king of Assyria. I think Assyria is Iraq, but don't quote me on that. Anyway, let's just keep on. And I will bring Israel again to his habitation. He shall feed on Carmel in Bashan, and his soul shall be satisfied upon Mount Ephraim and Gilead. So this is actually one of the purposes of the fall of Mystery Babylon. Return of the Jews to the Holy Land. And that does mean that there needs to be a large population of Jews in Mystery Babylon, which there are in the United States. There's probably about as many in Israel right now as there are in the United States, and then the rest, there's scattered tens of thousands here and there, hundreds of thousands here and there in the other countries. But Israel and the U.S. are the only places that have millions of Jews. Interesting. In those days, and in that time, saith the Lord, the iniquity of Israel shall be sought for, and there shall be none, and the sins of Judah they shall not be found, for I will pardon them whom I reserve. Go up against the land of Merathaim, even against it, and against the inhabitants of Pekod, waste and utterly destroy after them, saith the Lord, and do according to all that I have commanded thee. A sound of battle is in the land, and of great destruction. Now this is very interesting. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Civil War. How is the hammer of the whole earth cut asunder and broken? How has Babylon become a desolation among the nations? I've laid a snare for thee. Thou art taken, O Babylon, and thou wast not aware. Thou art found and also caught, because thou hast striven against the Lord. I'll just put rebellion against God. The Lord has opened his armory, and hath brought forth the weapons of his indignation, for this is the work of the Lord God of hosts in the land of the Chaldeans. Come against her from the utmost border, open her storehouses, cast her up as heaps, and destroy her utterly, let nothing of her be left. Slay all her bullocks, let them go down to the slaughter. Woe unto them, for their day is come, the time of their visitation. This is actually quite significant, I think. Because we have the bison, which is very much an American symbol. A lot of countries have cattle. We have a very unique, the bison. Alright, here we go. The voice of them that flee and escape out of the land of Babylon, to declare in Zion the vengeance of the Lord our God, the vengeance of his temple. Call together the archers against Babylon, all ye that bend the bow. Camp against it round about, let none thereof escape. Recompense her according to her work, according to all that she hath done, do to her, for she has been proud against the Lord, against the Holy One of Israel. Proud against the Lord. A recompense for her violence. She has a lot of men of war. We'll see that all throughout. Behold, I am against thee, O thou most proud, saith the Lord God of hosts, for thy day is come, the time that I will visit thee. Pride. And the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up, and I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all around him. Destruction by fire. So now we have missile weapons, arrows, and we have fire. Okay, those are themes that will keep popping up. Thus saith the Lord God of hosts, the Lord of hosts, the children of Israel and the children of Judah were oppressed together. All that took them captives held them fast. They refused to let them go. Their Redeemer is strong. The Lord of hosts is his name. He shall thoroughly plead their cause, that he may give rest to the land and disquiet the inhabitants of Babylon. A sword is upon the Chaldeans, saith the Lord, and upon the inhabitants of Babylon, upon her princes, and upon her wise men. A sword is upon the liars, and they shall dote. A sword is upon her mighty men, and they shall be dismayed. A sword is upon their horses, their chariots, upon the mingled people that are in the midst of her. Let's write that one down. They shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasures. They shall be robbed. A drought is upon her waters. They shall be dried up. It is the land of graven images. They are mad upon their idols. Mad upon their smartphones. Therefore, the wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the islands shall dwell there. And the owls shall dwell therein, and shall be no more inhabited forever. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. So this is not ancient Babylon, because there have been peoples living there off and on down through the ages. There was even a church at Babylon in the New Testament, which is mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible. As God overthrew Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities thereof. So if you've ever watched any of Ron Wyatt's stuff, or I'm pretty sure I have some videos here on my channel about it as well, those areas are desert. They're barren. Sodom and Gomorrah and the neighbor cities, they're gone. There's nothing there. They are so, there's like just these chalky dust canyons. And then if you look closely, you can find the sulfur balls that's embedded in there. That's the brimstone that God rained down. There's no water there. It's incredibly dry. And it's just like this white, chalky, ashy landscape. It's incredible. Masada overlooks one of these areas, just remote, dry, and it is absolutely uninhabited. And as it says here, so shall no man abide there, neither shall any son of man dwell therein. Behold, a people shall come from the north, and a great nation, and many kings shall be raised up from the coasts of the earth. There's going to be a coalition. Now, I'm actually going to say it's a coalition of Eastern powers. And the reason for that, so the north keeps getting mentioned here, from the north, from the north. Well, there's a couple ways to look at this. Of the north of what? Of Mystery Babylon, the entity that's being talked about here. What's north of Mystery Babylon? If Mystery Babylon's the United States, if you go north across the Arctic Circle from us, there's Russia. But then the scriptures are written, with the Holy Land as the center, Israel. So what's north of Israel? Well, if you go north of Israel, you'll come to Moscow, Russia. So either way, you end up at the same conclusion. A great nation of the north, Russia, in the end times. Regardless of whether you're using the U.S. or Israel as your starting point, you get to Russia. And that's just one nation, probably the pinnacle or premier nation of this coalition of Eastern powers. And I say Eastern powers, Russia, we actually don't consider it to be a northern nation, really. We consider it to be an Eastern nation. But we have many enemies in the East. Think of all the wars that we've been in over there, stirring up enemies for ourselves. They shall hold the bow and the lance. They are cruel and will not show mercy. Their voice shall roar like the sea. They shall ride upon horses, every one put in array like a man to battle against thee, O daughter of Babylon. The king of Babylon hath heard the report of them, and his hands waxed feeble. Anguish took hold of him, as pangs as of a woman in travail. Behold, he shall come up like a lion from the swelling of Jordan unto the habitation of the strong. But I will make them suddenly run away from her. And who is a chosen man that I may appoint over her? For who is like me, and who will appoint me the time? And who is that shepherd that will stand before me? That actually is a passage that I just encountered recently in a slightly different spot in Scripture, so I'm going to need to revisit that at some point. Let's actually write that down. Jeremiah 50:44. Yeah. Okay. Therefore hear ye the counsel of the Lord that he hath taken against Babylon, and his purposes, that he has purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. Yeah, there's something deep here. That I missed before, that I'd never seen before. I'm going to have to come back and visit it, but we're just hitting the highlights and talking about Mystery Babylon right now. But listen to this. At the noise of the taking of Babylon, the earth is moved, and the cry is heard among the nations. It shakes the international community. Absolutely. Alright, next chapter. Continuing on, because this is where it starts getting real interesting. Behold, I will raise up against Babylon, and against them that dwell in the midst of them that rise up against me, a destroying wind, and will send unto Babylon fanners that shall fan her, and shall empty her land, for in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. So, I don't know exactly what's going on with this, but we have been having some strange and extreme weather. There is a phenomenon called a firestorm, which you get really bad winds combined with a wildfire, and yeah, it can be pretty interesting. So what would be causing the fires? Well, nuclear weapons. We already talked about arrows and fire being the cause of destruction, and then if God is actually using nature to stir up the ironic thing is, if things get hot enough and you have all these atomized metals in the atmosphere, lithium and others that are being, seeded as well, all that stuff is going to contribute to a very, very hot fire. And that may be an aspect of this as well. That, what are these fanners exactly? Are these angelic beings that are, controlling winds? Maybe, because we do see there are angels given charge over the winds. And are these winds then being used by God to intensify the flames, perhaps? Or is this a reference to something like chemtrails and geoengineering and things like that, that these atomized metals being put in the atmosphere are actually going to make the ignition of the country by nuclear fire that much worse, blanketing the earth with these metal particulates that's going to make those fires burn even hotter? Well, we'll see. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow. So it's like counter snipers, right? Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow. Against him that lifteth himself up in his brigandine, spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. So we're going to find that there is massive death within the land. And we will see that a component of this is actually civil war. That's explicitly laid out in this chapter, but we'll see that in just a moment. But this is interesting. Against him that bendeth. So, mutually assured destruction, right? And that's the idea that if you have two sides that both have nuclear weapons, having those nuclear weapons deters the other side from using them, because if one guy pulls the trigger, the other guy does too, and everybody dies. There's a problem with that, though. What if something happens to one nation, destroying their nuclear command and control to the point that they can't pull the trigger anymore, and the other guy sees that and realizes this is our chance to take them out, and they'll never be a threat again? And that's exactly what this passage says is going to happen. And so it's interesting that they are firing against the ones who would be firing back at them given the chance. The archers are targeting the other archers, is what's going on here. The defenses are being destroyed. Alright, let's continue on. For Israel hath not been forsaken, nor Judah of his God, of the Lord of hosts, though their land was filled with sin against the Holy One of Israel. Flee out of the midst of Babylon, and deliver every man his soul. Be not cut off in her iniquity, for this is the time of the Lord's vengeance. He will render unto her a recompense. Now this is interesting, because we have this admonition to flee. Remove from her my people, so that you're not caught up in the punishment for her heinous sins. This doesn't make sense in light of ancient Babylon, where God's people were slaves there. They were in captivity. They couldn't just leave. So it wouldn't make sense to give them a command to leave, to flee, to avoid judgment. That wouldn't have been something that they had the self-determination to do. So this passage is clearly not about ancient Babylon. Something else is going on here. Babylon hath been a golden cup in the Lord's hand, that made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken of her wine, therefore the nations are mad. And specifically, this is the wine of the wrath of her fornication. And we'll talk about that. That's from Revelation. The United States creates... the figure escapes me at the moment. It's either 2/3 or 3/4 of all the pornography in the world. We create a majority of the adult content. And the sexual revolution began here and spread to all the nations. Promiscuity, fornication. Understand that is a... Now I don't think humanity is going to... let me put it this way. When women were just allowed to fornicate with whomever they wanted, without any kind of repercussions, and to murder their babies, that's a society ending. That's a civilization ending phenomenon right now. And we're reaping the consequences of that. It is civilization ending just from a practical, materialistic standpoint. Let's not even talk about the spiritual element of that, which is that God gives children as a gift, and he hates it when we take the lives of innocent children. And fornication in the Old Testament was a death penalty offense. Take all that out of the equation and just say that just on a practical level, when you let women have as many sex partners as they want and abort their babies, that's civilization ending. Now, I don't think time's going to go on long enough that in and of itself will end civilization. I think other things will happen first. But that right there, human civilization is already on the road to destruction. But God's judgment is coming sooner than that destruction naturally would just occur, the natural consequence. Alright, and it says here, therefore the nations are mad. Yeah, I mean, look at the statistics. 90% of adults in the West are porn or sex addicted. In the ministry, 75% or more of pastors are porn or sex addicted. And that's just the ones who are being honest. Let's be honest, the rates between pastors and the rest of the population are probably about the same. That's just being realistic. If not worse amongst pastors. That's a weird thing to say, but the reality is that the vast majority of pastors will be members of their congregation will attempt to seduce them at some point in their ministry. It's the vast majority of pastors have this happen to them. It's something like 80%. And, some of those pastors fall to that temptation. And I think this is a natural thing where people in positions of spiritual leadership face more temptation than the public at large. And so it would not surprise me that, the rates of sex addiction and porn addiction would be the same or maybe even higher amongst pastors. Because, of course, then you do have pastors who are corrupt, completely corrupt, and they're in it for the money. They're not in it for the ministry at all. They're in it for the power and the money. And there's plenty of pastors like that, let's be honest about it. Alright, continuing on. Babylon is suddenly fallen and destroyed. Howl for her, take balm for her pain, if so be she may be healed. We would have healed Babylon, but she is not healed. Forsake us, let us go every one into his own country, for her judgment reacheth unto heaven, and is lifted up even to the skies. What does this mean? Well, the idea here is that these immigrants, it's a nation of immigrants, and the immigrants love her and try to save her, but they can't, so they return to their own countries. That's what's going on here. The Lord hath brought forth our righteousness. Come, let us declare in Zion the work of the Lord our God. In other words, this is a judgment, and the Lord is doing it to get people right with himself, is what's going on here. And people are going to realize that. They're going to see what happens to Mystery Babylon. Her fall is a judgment from God. And people will know it. I've had many pastors say this, and it's absolutely true, that if God doesn't judge America, he owes Sodom and Gomorrah an apology. Folks, let me tell you something. Unequivocally, God's going to judge America. It's coming. Alright, so here we go. Make bright the arrows, gather the shields. The Lord has raised up the spirit of the kings of the Medes for his devices against Babylon to destroy it, because it is the vengeance of the Lord, the vengeance of his temple. Set up the standard upon the walls of Babylon. Make the watch strong. Set up the watchmen. Prepare ambushes. Let's continue here. O thou that dwellest upon many waters, abundant in treasures, thine end is come, and the measure of thy covetousness. So, dwelling upon many waters, the passage in Revelation about Mystery Babylon explains what many waters represents. It can be many peoples or nations. In other words, a nation of immigrants. But America is also quite literally a country that is dwelling upon many waters. We got the Mississippi. It's one of the reasons we're so wealthy, because we have all these waterways. We got the Mississippi River Basin. We got the Great Lakes. These facilitated trade and communication and travel all across the continent. They, allowed for irrigation and things like that, fishing and industry and all manner of other things. The waterways of North America made the United States, they were a huge contributing factor to the wealth, power, and growth of this nation. And abundant in treasures, yes. Abundant in treasures. I think that is the land, but also the wealth. It's both. America has land that is abundant, people that are wealthy. Okay, continuing on. The Lord of hosts has sworn by himself, saying, surely I will fill thee with men. I will fill thee with men. This is fascinating, considering that something like 70+% of immigrants coming here are young men of military age. Interesting. And they shall lift up a shout against thee. I'm going to say military age migrants, aliens, illegal aliens. Yeah, they're going to contribute to the chaos when the Civil War kicks off. That's what's going to happen. Okay, let's continue on. Alright, talking about the Lord here. Compared to the Lord, every man is brutish. By comparison, every founder is confounded by the graven image. For his molten image is falsehood, and there's no breath in them. When I see this, graven images, alright. Graven images that confound and molten images of falsehood. And there's no breath in either of those, and yet they're confounding and spreading falsehood. What are we talking about here? Well, I think it's all these AI apps, frankly. It is. I work with AI for a living now. It's amazing the degree to which people consult these things about every little detail of their life. It is terrifying. They are vanity, the work of errors. In the time of their visitation, they shall perish. Yeah, if this is talking about AI, and I think it certainly fits, but AI is definitely vanity, and it's definitely the work of an error. I work with it for a living, and I'm a huge critic of it. Very dangerous. Now, it's not overtly demonic, it is a tool, but let me just say the way it's being trained, what it's being used for, the dangers far outweigh the positive upsides, and unfortunately the wrong people are developing the technology. It will be used for evil. Period. It is being used for evil. It's hard for me to point out to anything good that it can be used for. Yeah, it's just not. Anyway, continuing on. Now, this is what God says to Mystery Babylon. Thou art my battle axe and weapons of war. Battle axe and weapons of war. Let's put the Lord's. So this entity, Mystery Babylon, the Lord says, it's my battle axe and my weapons of war. Watch this carefully. For with thee will I break in pieces the nations, with thee will I destroy kingdoms. With thee will I break in pieces the horse and his rider, and with thee will I break in pieces the chariot and his rider. With thee also will I break in pieces man and woman, and with thee will I break in pieces old and young, and with thee will I break in pieces the young man and the maid. I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock, and with thee will I break in pieces the husbandman and his yoke of oxen, and with thee will I break in pieces captains and rulers. And I will render unto Babylon and to all the inhabitants of Chaldea all their evil that they have done in Zion in your sight, saith the Lord. Wages war on everyone and kills everyone. And there is very much the connotation here that Christians are suffering around the world because of the actions of this entity. And if you really dig into things, folks, you understand that the American intelligence services are behind all manner of filth and evil in the world. There's no way of getting around it. And think of all the wars that we've had just in my lifetime. Think of the war on terror. And you know, there's all these places that we're not at war, but we got troops. We got people in Ukraine. We got people in Syria. We're in Lebanon. Yeah, you know, we got Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran. Look what we just did in Venezuela. We don't declare war anymore. We're just in a constant state of war. And it's like whack-a-mole. You know, you stick your head up and spit at the U.S. Well, Emperor Nebuchadnezzar is gonna whack you. Um, we've been in a state of war pretty much my entire life, and yeah, we, America, Mystery Babylon, we've been used to break in pieces all the above, innocent and guilty alike. All these wars that we're involved in, we don't really fight them with a level of discretion, and we don't limit the scope as well as we ought. And a lot of innocent people, a lot of men, women, and children who don't deserve to die, die. We know this. It's talked about after every new war that we're involved with, and nothing seems to change. Behold, I'm against thee, O destroying mountains, saith the Lord, which destroyest all the earth. I will stretch out mine hand upon thee, and roll thee down from the rocks, and make thee a burnt mountain. You know, there it is, destroys the whole earth. And there's the warfare aspect of this. There's also the geoengineering aspect, destroying the earth realm. They shall not take of thee a stone for a corner. No cornerstones salvaged. This is a fascinating, and nor a stone for foundations, and thou shalt be desolate forever. This is astounding. And why is it so astounding? Freemasonry. Freemasons lay the cornerstones of virtually all public buildings in the United States. I was reading this article the other day. I was actually researching Masonic cornerstones. You know, Masons laid the cornerstone of the U.S. Capitol, the state capitals. They lay the cornerstones of courthouses. They lay the cornerstones of public buildings. They lay the cornerstones of schools. And in Illinois, there's this article where people were complaining to the local authorities that no one had gotten permission for Freemasons to lay the cornerstone of this particular school building. And then one of the officials came back and said, well, yeah, in this case we didn't ask for permission for the Freemasons to do it, we just let them do it. The reason being they've laid the cornerstones of all the other cornerstones of public buildings in the state. Think about that. And that's the state of Illinois. Freemasons. We've talked about that before on this channel. I have that expose video, the one-eyed secret religion. What are Freemasons? They're Luciferians. I'm not going to say all Freemasons are Illuminati. They're not necessarily the same thing. But Freemasonry is definitely a tool of the Illuminati. It is a Luciferian mystery religion. We've talked about this. These aren't good people. They're into things, terrible things, done in secret. And I think it's fascinating that we have a reference here to cornerstones. There won't be any more laying of cornerstones. Now this is fascinating as well. I don't have my notes near me right now as to what these kingdoms are, but they're all kingdoms there in the Middle East. So if you take these, Ararat, that's going to be Turkey. Who's Turkey aligned with? Well, they're allied more and more with Russia these days because we keep pushing them away. Turkey was pretty neutral. They're trying to stay between the East and West, and the U.S. started putting pressure on them. If you want our fighter jets, then you got to cut ties with Russia and stop buying their missiles. And that actually just drove Turkey into the arms of Russia. They're much more closely aligned with the East now than they are with the West. Because the West is stupid. Our leaders are morons in the West. But Ararat, so Turkey, who are they aligned with? They're aligned with Russia, which is that northern kingdom. We already talked about that. Mini, Ashkenaz, and other places. And And with the kings of the Medes, there's this coalition of Eastern powers that's all going to raise up. And when they see their opportunity, they're going to destroy Mystery Babylon, which is America, in a massive nuclear first strike. It's going to be just one day, and Babylon's gone. The land shall tremble in sorrow, for every purpose of the Lord shall be performed against Babylon, to make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant. The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. So there's a lot of enemies. Pretty much all the Eastern powers, and that's exactly, I mean, what country has enemies who are all the Eastern powers right now? Well, that's us. That's us. The land will be desolate without an inhabitant. What kind of weaponry does that? The mighty men of Babylon have forborne to fight. What would cause that? Has many mighty men. I'm just going to put that down here again. Let's face it, America has the best mighty men in the world right now. We do. Because we're always in a state of warfare. Our military has the best equipment. We have the best communications. We have the best training programs. We have the best men. The reality is we have artificial growth hormone in all the foods, which is why Americans are much bigger on average than people elsewhere. And then I'm sure, well, I know for a fact actually that our soldiers are being enhanced as well. But something's going to happen that causes them to forbear to fight. What could do that? Nuclear weapons. The United States is the only nation that's used them in the past, and that actually made us the world superpower for a while. And the fall of Mystery Babylon, the United States, will be marked by the use of nuclear weapons again, and the nation that uses them, or leads the use of them, will end up being the next world superpower. That's just how it's going to go down. And it will make the land of Babylon a desolation without an inhabitant, which, by the way, does not apply to ancient Babylon. Not the case at all. So we're clearly, again, not talking about ancient Babylon here. And the mighty men will be so demoralized of Mystery Babylon that they will remain at home. Their might has failed. They've become as women. They've burned her. Now, this is interesting. They've burned her dwelling places. Her bars are broken. In other words, there's violence and chaos at home. Burning, looting. That's what this is talking about. Burning and looting. So I'm kind of mixing in details of the destruction as well as the characteristics of Mystery Babylon into this list here, right? But we've already experienced burning and looting. We've seen this year after year with these protests and stuff. One post shall run to meet another, one messenger to meet another, to show the king of Babylon that his city is taken at one end. The passages are stopped, the reeds are burned with fire, the men of war are affrighted. Daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor, it's time to thresh her. Yet a little while, and the time of her harvest shall come. Passages are stopped, reeds are burned with fire. I think this is a reference to waterways going dry and boats being destroyed. I'm starting to lose my voice here, so let's keep on rolling, I guess. Anyway, there's some kind of blood guiltiness on the part of God's people that is on Mystery Babylon. Don't know exactly what that is right now. My thought is that, post-COVID, it could be that we did get the vax to Israel. They were one of the most vaccinated nations on earth. I don't know that they were necessarily the most vaccinated. But they were one of the most vaccinated. At one point, most people in Israel had at least 3 vaccines, and a very large percentage of the population got them. And then when people started realizing all the issues and side effects, there was this outcry in Israel. People were vandalizing and spray painting messages on pharmacies and stuff like that. It was insane. Nebuchadrezzar, the king of Babylon, hath devoured me, hath crushed me, hath made me an empty vessel. He's swallowed me up like a dragon. He's filled his belly with my delicates. He's cast me out. But again, like I said, are we talking about... so there's something here where God has a grudge against Mystery Babylon for his people. Is that the Jewish people, ethnic Jews? Possibly. I do believe, because Paul wrote it in the New Testament, is God done with Israel? God forbid. I think he still has a plan for them. I think he's still going to redeem many of them and remove the spiritual blindness that they've been under while the times of the Gentiles have been accomplished. See, right now we're in the times of the Gentiles. The salvation has been extended to us who are not Jewish. But the times of the Gentiles is going to come to an end. Daniel's prophetic timeline is going to resume, and salvation, there are going to be Jews that are converted in large numbers at the end. Alright, I will dry up her sea and make her springs dry. That's really interesting. So we do have these Great Lakes that are kind of like an inland ocean. That's pretty interesting. But then, here's another thing that's really fascinating. We do now have dry up her sea. We do have the Gulf of America now, too. So what does this mean? I'm just going to put Great Lakes, Gulf of America, because I've seen several people have a very similar prophetic vision, which is this: the nuclear strikes that hit all across across the United States, they trigger Yellowstone, and then there's a massive upheaval all across the continent that just changes everything, resulting in this big rift going right up the middle where the Mississippi Basin is, and that becomes an inland sea. A lot of Florida goes underwater. A lot of the country is just destroyed by the eruptions and the earthquakes and stuff from Yellowstone. Whether this ends up happening or not, I don't know. But it's fascinating that a lot of people are having this same prophetic vision. And I'm not trying to monger any fear or whatever. I'm not afraid at all at this point. Like, I've lived plenty long. I'm a born again believer. My life is hid with Christ on high. I could drop dead, immediately after finishing this video, and it really wouldn't bother me. I'm not too keen on dying horribly, of course. Nobody is, but death itself doesn't have any fear or terror for me anymore. And it really shouldn't for you either if you're a born-again believer. And if you're not, by all means, read the Gospel of John. Ask yourself what your purpose is, and don't rest until you have an answer to that question. Jesus Christ is God in the flesh, and he wants you to be reconciled to God the Father. That's the reason Jesus Christ came to die for our sins. Sin separates us from God, and we're all sinners. We need a Savior. We need that spiritual rebirth. The Gospel of John talks about these things. In their heat I will make their feasts, I will make them drunken, that they may rejoice, and sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake, saith the Lord. So, coping via drugs and alcohol. So that's how people in Mystery Babylon are going to deal with the things that happen, and a lot of them are just going to die. They'll drink themselves to death, they'll overdose, or they will put themselves in a state where they can't protect themselves from things that happen. Just like this, I'll bring them down like lambs to the slaughter. They'll just be vulnerable to, whatever, being killed and exploited. Praise of the whole earth is a description of this entity. Praise of the whole earth. and she becomes an astonishment among the nations. The sea has come up upon Babylon. She's covered with the multitude of the waves thereof. This actually speaks to what I just mentioned, that there's this geological upheaval. Maybe, the Gulf of America gets uplifted and the center of the United States sinks down into this inland rift that becomes an inland sea. Maybe, I don't know. That's what part of that inland rift or sea is part of these prophetic visions that some people are having. Like I said, there's no way to confirm this stuff until it happens, but it is very interesting. Her cities, now this is interesting, her cities. I'm going to write that down. Her cities, because some people are telling me Mystery Babylon is only one city. No, it's a land according to this here. Her cities are a desolation, a dry land, a wilderness, a land wherein no man dwelleth, neither doth any son of man pass thereby. And I will punish Bel in Babylon. I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he hath swallowed up. The nations shall not flow together any more unto him. Yea, the wall of Babylon shall fall. So, has a wall, and nations flow in, and Bel shall be punished. Now this is triumphant arch of Trump. So let me mention what I'm thinking here. So I wrote a book in 2019 about the Mystery Babylon prophecies, where I talked about these 2 chapters in Jeremiah, and there were a lot of little details that I missed or didn't really understand at that point in time. And here's what I think is going on now. We've talked about how that in the second heaven there are these spiritual principalities and powers. These are demonic entities. Well, there are some principalities and powers that have remained as part of God's government. They're still loyal to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. 2/3, actually, the majority of the angelic host are going to stay on God's side. But 1/3 will be seduced away by the devil, and have been already, and that hierarchy has been corrupted. And human beings are in positions of power communicating with this hierarchy. And these watchers have jurisdiction over nations. We see this in Daniel, where Michael is the prince over Israel. And he's the archangel because of his faithfulness and integrity. And he's stuck with Jesus the whole time, through thick and thin. And I think this Bel is another prince. I think this is a prince that used to rule in the ancient world, but is given dominion over America. And there's a theory that these triumphant arches that you see, for example, there's one in Rome, for example, there's one in France that was just involved in this satanic ritual for the Olympics. These triumphant arches, they are like, they're like nameplates for these spiritual principalities and powers. They show ownership over a region. And Trump wants to build a triumphant arch here in the United States. I find that really interesting. I think that this Bel entity, who's a false god of the ancient world, but actually a real spiritual demonic entity, demonic principality, I believe that Bel is the one that's going to be given, because it's a person here. I will bring forth out of his mouth that which he has swallowed up. The nations shall not flow any more unto him. Look at this stuff with like Astro World and stuff like that. And the wall of Babylon shall fall. So Babylon has a wall. And again, we have, my people, go ye out of the midst of her, and deliver ye every man his soul from the fierce anger of the Lord. Go out and deliver yourselves Again, this isn't something you say to slaves who can't leave a place of their own volition. This is not speaking to people in captivity in Babylon, ancient Babylon. This is Mystery Babylon here. Now, here we go. Crux of the thing. Lest your heart faint and you fear for the rumor that shall be heard in the land. A rumor shall both come in 1 year, and after that in another year shall come a rumor. Violence in the land, ruler against ruler. So, rumor of civil war, year after year. And you will know that it's upon you when you actually see the violence in the land. Violence in the land, ruler against ruler, civil war is here. So there's going to be rumors of civil war. That's where we are right now. Hear it all the time. There were whispers of it back in 2019 when I wrote my book, How America Ends. Now everyone's talking about civil war. We're seeing it. Now, I don't think we've quite seen it on the level of ruler against ruler openly yet, but it's coming. And the Bible says this: when you see that, violence in the land, ruler against ruler, then behold, the days come that I will do judgment upon the graven images of Babylon, her whole land. She has a whole land, shall be confounded, and all her slain shall fall in the midst of her. Then the heaven and the earth and all that is therein shall sing for Babylon, for the spoilers shall come unto her from the north, saith the Lord. So this is a place that heaven and earth are invested in her. So I believe that that's your spiritual principalities and powers, and then that is your merchants of the earth, like we see in Revelation. And then the spoilers. As Babylon hath caused the slain of Israel to fall, so at Babylon shall fall the slain of all the earth. Why will all the slain of all the earth fall at Babylon? Because people from all over the earth are in Babylon. Nation of immigrants. Aliens, refugees. They're here, and they're all many of them are gonna die. People from all around the world will die in Babylon. It's gonna be insane. Ye that have escaped the sword, go away, stand not still, remember the Lord afar off, and let Jerusalem come into your mind. Used by God, the fall, we'll say, used to bring God's people back to Jerusalem. I believe this is the first gathering in the end times of the saints back, of God's people back to Jerusalem. Second time. Let's see if I can find this real quick. The Bible talks about what the second gathering is going to be. Yes, here we go. Isaiah 11:11. It shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, from Egypt, from Pathros, from Cush, from Elam, from Shinar, from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. And what does that mean, Isaiah 11:11? What's the context of this? I believe, if this is the passage I was looking at the other day, you shall set up an ensign for the nations, and shall assemble the outcasts of Israel, and gather together the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. Yes, this is the millennial kingdom. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, that's Jesus, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. They shall not hurt nor destroy in all my holy mountain, for the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea, and so forth. And we see here that's specifically talking about the millennial kingdom in this passage. You can look that up in more detail if you are so inclined. Alright, let's get this wrapped up. My voice is definitely starting to go. We are confounded because we have heard reproach. Shame has covered our faces, for strangers are come into the sanctuaries of the Lord's house. All across America are churches. What's going to happen in a civil war situation? These churches are going to be plundered, pillaged, used as refuges by people, just like any other building. The sanctuaries of the Lord's house, it's plural by the way, notice, the sanctuaries of the Lord's house, they're going to be defiled all across the country when the fall comes, when the Civil War comes. If you studied history, if you studied the Revolution or the American Civil War, we already know how this is going to play out, how factionalized it's going to be, how there's going to be guerrilla warfare, how there will be groups posing as military units that really they're just bandits, going around pillaging and raping, taking what they want and doing what they want. We have more guns than people in the United States. It's going to be a complete free-for-all. Nothing like it has ever been seen before. It's going to be civil war, and it's just going to be absolute chaos. And what's going to happen at that point? At that point, command and control is going to be completely nullified. And then this coalition of Eastern powers, they're going to get their revenge. They're going to say the United States has been a thorn in our side for too long. It's time to pull the trigger and end them and take the world back for ourselves. And they're going to do that. Though Babylon, well, let's see. So God is judging her graven image. Let's write this. Sanctuaries of the Lord defiled. I'll just put it down. Churches. Churches destroyed and defiled. Graven images. We've talked about that already. We got a lot of graven images in this country. Don't tell me we don't. We have movie stars, we got pop idols, we've got video games, we've got cell phones, AI, music, pornography, all manner of fashion, clothes, brands. Oh man, we're the best. We're the best at idolatry. We are the best at idolatry. And then there's actual literal graven images too, as we saw with Epstein, where they're worshiping the ancient gods from the old world. They're worshiping Moloch, and they're worshiping Bacchus and all this other crap. It's all here. It's all here, and the judgment that comes is going to be a just judgment upon us for that. Mounts to heaven. And I'm putting this in parentheses because it's something that we claim. I mean, we're up there. We got satellites, which are balloons. We've got high altitude spacecraft. We have anti-gravitic craft. I've talked about that in other videos. I'm just going to put anti-gravitic. And then, of course, we have claimed to have gone and walked on the moon and been to outer space. Nope. Lies. But the claim is made, at least. And though she should fortify the height of her strength, yet from me shall spoilers come unto her, saith the Lord. In other words, he's the one who's orchestrating this destruction. It is his judgment. It might look like it's nations doing it, but it's going to be so complete. It's going to be so well orchestrated. It's going to be so efficacious and so destructive that the world is still going to acknowledge, yes, this was God judging her. The sound of a cry cometh from Babylon, and great destruction from the land of the Chaldeans, because the Lord has spoiled Babylon. By the way, what is the significance of Chaldeans? It's a ruling class, educated ruling class of mystics, I'll say, because these are like your sorcerers and your astrologers and stuff like that. Highly educated, but also charlatans, mystics and charlatans. And we have our ruling class of elites, these influencers and Hollywood socialites at the top, but also the secret societies and things like that. We already talked about the Cornerstone and its ties to Freemasonry. Her mighty men are taken, every one of their bows is broken. Why this reference to bows broken? Missile weapons taken offline. I believe that is a reference to our nuclear weapons. A bow fires an arrow. It's a projectile weapon. The idea that the bow is being broken, I think this is showing that our nuclear weapons are just destroyed and disabled. For the Lord God of recompenses shall surely requite. And I will make drunk her princes, her wise men, her captives, her captains, her rulers, her mighty men. They shall sleep a perpetual sleep and not wake, saith the King, whose name is the Lord of hosts. She does have walls. The broad walls of Babylon shall be utterly broken. Her high gates shall be burned with fire. The people shall labor in vain, the folk in the fire, and they shall be weary. Fires that won't be put out. The word which Jeremiah the prophet commanded Seraiah, the son of Neriah, the son of Maaseiah, when he went to Zedekiah the king of Judah into Babylon, with Zedekiah the king of Judah into Babylon in the 4th year of his reign. And this Seraiah was a quiet prince. So Jeremiah wrote in a book all the evil that should come upon Babylon, even all these words that are written against Babylon. Jeremiah said to Seraiah, when thou comest to Babylon, and shalt see and shalt read all these words, then shalt thou say, O Lord, thou hast spoken against this place to cut it off, that none shall remain in it, neither man nor beast, but that it shall be desolate forever. And it shall be, when thou hast made an end of reading this book, that thou shalt bind a stone to it, and cast it into the midst of Euphrates. Thou shalt say, Thus shall Babylon sink, and shall not rise from the evil that I will bring upon her, and they shall be weary. Thus far the words of Jeremiah. And I'm just going to write millstone, because in other passages we're told that Mystery Babylon is like a millstone that God casts into the sea, never to rise again. And the millstone has its connotation of child abuse and, pedophiles. I'm just going to put PDOs. What country is it, do you think, that's consuming children more than any other country on earth? Well, just like we're the country that's cranking out the most porn, we're the country that is devouring the most children. Epstein made it clear that this stuff is going on. When I say devour children, I don't just mean figuratively. I do mean literally. Epstein made that very clear as well. Folks, my voice is pretty much gone. But I think the meaning of this is quite clear. Let's just go through the list real quick. And by the way, this is just Jeremiah. I haven't even gone back and looked at Revelation. I haven't tied it in with Daniel 7. I think we're going to have to make this a multi-part video. But this Mystery Babylon entity, idols and images, enemy of the north, large Jewish population, and then the destruction brings them back to Jerusalem. Destroyed by missile weapons and fire. Enemy coalition in the north. Very wealthy, spoils satisfies great nations, a destroyer of mine heritage, has a mother country. I didn't talk about this in detail, but we do have a mother country, Great Britain. And guess what? In Daniel 7, What's that first entity? Well, it is a winged lion, a lion with eagle's wings, and then the eagle's wings are removed from it. Yeah, that's the United States of America, folks. Just like in Daniel 2, where you have the Table of Nations in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and the first one listed is the head of gold. That is mystery. That is ancient Babylon. Well, in Daniel 7, you have another Table of Nations. You have the four winds of the heavens striving upon the great sea, and these terrible beast kingdoms. These beast kingdoms come up. What are these beast kingdoms? Well, these are the four superpowers in the end times that precede the second coming of Christ. Daniel 2, you have the four empires that precede the first coming of Christ. Daniel 7, you have the four empires that precede the second coming of Christ. And the first one is what? It's a winged lion. It's a lion with eagle's wings. The wings were removed, and it's lifted up from the earth. What's up with that? You have Great Britain, the lion. You have America, the eagle's wings. Eagle's wings removed. And thus, Mystery Babylon has a mother country. Hindermost of nations. Go look at an AE map. Go look at where America is. We're kind of all off by ourselves, aren't we? We're a backwater, kind of. How did a country like us, that's kind of away from the rest of the world, away from Europe and the Middle East, the center of civilization back in the ancient world, how did we become so powerful and great? Well, we're sitting on many waters. We have all these natural resources. We're a land of immigrants and all this stuff, lots of real estate. But we are the hindermost of nations if you look at that AE map and where we're placed. Very interesting. Destroyed and attacked by missile weapons. Has a wall that will be destroyed. Seasonal migrant workers picking fruit, working the fields. Babylon has a king, a ruler whose power is at the level of a king or emperor by the end. Return of the Jews to the Holy Land, talked about that. Hammer of the whole earth, rebellion against God. Her bullocks are killed. I do believe that that is buffalo and bison. These are species that are pretty unique to the U.S. There might be some in Canada, but they're pretty iconic of the United States. And it sounds like when the U.S. is destroyed, they will go extinct. Proud against the Lord. Recompense for her violence has many men of war. Pride, destruction by fire. Mingled people in the midst of her, in other words, immigrants. Mad upon their idols, that's definitely us. Coalition of Eastern powers is her enemy. Yeah, our enemy is a coalition of Eastern powers. Shakes the international community when she's destroyed. Yes, that's us. Massive death within the land. Admonition to flee. That proves that God's people living there have the free will to leave if they want to. They're not slaves. Wine of the wrath of her fornication. That ties into Revelation. Again, this sexual revolution started here and spread to the nations through Hollywood and our exporting of American culture and, depravity. Immigrants love her and try to save her, but fail and go back to their home countries. Her fall is a judgment from God. The world knows it. She dwells on many waters, literally. Great Lakes, Mississippi River Basin, Chesapeake Bay, but also figuratively, many peoples and nations, abundant in treasures, both natural and the wealth of the people. I will fill thee with men, illegal immigrants of military age, graven images that confound with no breath, molten images of falsehood that have no breath, AI, the Lord's battle axe and weapons of war used by God to destroy other wicked nations, like what just happened in Iran. No one's arguing that Iran's regime was righteous. These were wicked men at the top. The position of the regime, for example, in Iran, one of the mullahs taught that it's completely fine for a Muslim man to have intercourse with animals as long as the animal gets killed and fed to infidels afterwards. That's the level of depravity that Iran stood for. They got what they deserved. I'm not shedding any tears for Iran. Now, whether we need to be the ones to be doing stuff over there, we could have that debate. But the reality is this stuff is very biblical. God has always used America to destroy evil regimes who stand against him. But that victory that we've been given from the Lord has made us proud and arrogant, wages war on everyone, kills everyone, breaks everyone in pieces, destroys the whole earth. No cornerstones to salvage. That term cornerstone has a direct link to Freemasonry, who are the ones who are laying all the cornerstones in this country. But guess what? After the destruction, they won't be laying any more cornerstones here, and no one's going to take from the ruins and rebuild. Enemies, pretty much all the Eastern powers are her enemy, has many mighty men, burning and looting. We've seen that already to a lesser degree. We'll see it again to a greater degree. Dry up her sea. Don't know what exactly that means, but we got Great Lakes and we got the Gulf of America. Coping via drugs and alcohol. We already do that for normal life. Of course people will be doing that when they see the end of the nation coming. Praise of the whole earth. Yeah, America is. Everyone loves Disney. Everyone loves America. Everyone loves rock and roll. Everyone loves Hollywood. Even though so much of it is satanic filth, we are still the praise of the whole earth. She has many cities. She has a land. She has a wall. Nations flow in. Bel shall be punished. There is a principality ruling over her. Many people... after 9/11, we just felt like something's been hanging over this country, like she's been given over out of the hand of God and into the hand of something else. A lot of people have felt that. Go out and deliver yourselves. Rumor of civil war year after year. Yeah, we've had that rumor. We've had that since 2019 at least, probably before, but whispers in 2019. Now everyone's talking civil war. It's everywhere. Violence in the land, ruler against ruler. We see protests that are getting violent and crazy and ridiculous. We don't see open warfare, ruler against ruler. Not yet. It's coming. She has a whole land. Heaven and earth are invested in her. Slain of all the earth will perish within her when the end comes. Because we are a nation of immigrants, aliens, and refugees. She will fall. Her fall will be used to bring God's people back to Jerusalem. Where are the Jews in the world? Well, they're in Israel, and they're in the United States. So far as we know, like I said, there's some uncertainty there about that, but the fall of Mystery Babylon will bring a large population of God's people back to the Holy Land. The sanctuaries of the Lord will be defiled, which does mean that this country, whatever she is, has to have sanctuaries of the Lord in the first place, and there are many churches in the United States of America. Graven images, yes, we're the best at graven images. Mounts to heaven, of course. NASA, lying Freemasons, but also black technology like anti-gravitics and drones we have mounted to the heavens. Satellites as well, which are high altitude, highly sophisticated balloons. And yes, we lie about having landed on the moon and all that nonsense too, which is lies. But yes, we have actually mounted to heaven in various ways as well, especially with the anti-gravitics. These things will be revealed little by little as time goes on, and I have that video on. I have several videos on UFOs and anti-gravitics at this point. Educated ruling class of mystics and charlatans who are Luciferians. Yes, we've got that. Absolutely. Bows broken. The missile weapons will be taken offline, and she will be unable to retaliate against those who have attacked her. Fires that won't be put out, and the association with the millstone. This was not necessarily in this passage, just the sinking like a heavy stone, but in other passages she's associated with the millstone. And the millstone is associated with Christ's teaching on child abuse and how it'd be better for someone to have a millstone tied about their neck and be cast into the sea than to offend these little ones, little children. I will lay out one final thought and then we'll call it quits on this video. My final thought is this. Jeremiah orders that the words of the book get bound to a stone and cast into the Euphrates. God does not do anything accidentally. And we see in the scriptures that during the end times the Euphrates is going to dry up. And my question is this: when the time is ready for the fall of Mystery Babylon, has God preserved this text at the bottom of the Euphrates to be uncovered and revealed as a testament of what he's doing? I think it's a very real possibility that this book has been miraculously preserved somehow at the bottom of the Euphrates for thousands of years. That's my theory. You heard it first here. And we'll see how that turns out. Well, God bless, guys. My voice is going out. I will try to do a part 2, maybe even a part 3 at some point, because there's passages in Isaiah that I think talk about Mystery Babylon and not ancient Babylon. And then clearly in Revelation we have passages that outright refer to Mystery Babylon. Anyway, God bless. You guys have a good one.